Graffiti, as defined by the Oxford Dictionary, means writing or drawings scribbled, scratched, or sprayed illicitly on a wall or other surface in a public place. Let's talk for a moment about the etymology. The word graffiti, in the singular graffito, derives from the Italian word graffiato, which means to scratch, which in turn comes from the ancient Greek graphein, to write. So what are the origins of graffiti? Graffiti actually started in the Stone Age, when people told stories to their family members around the campfire, or by etching images into the cave walls. This was a practice that carried into ancient Roman times, and we would like to present a few inscriptions taken from public bathrooms in Pompeii and Herculaneum. Check it out, and you'll see that ancient Romans had a sense of humor. A Latin inscription reads, Micimus in lecto faetor peccavimus pospes sidices quare nulla matella fuit. This translates as, we have wet the bed, I admit. We were wrong, my host. If you ask why, there was no chamber pot.
Seems like a legit excuse for wetting bed.
Now here's another interesting one that reads, Theophile non faciunt oralis secus super puellas adversum civitatem muris tanquam canum. Translating as, Theophilus, don't perform oral sex on girls against a city wall like a dog.
Didn't know dogs had oral sex. The more you know.
Another inscription in Latin reads, Ego vita pincerna. This translates as, I screwed the barmaid.
This guy brought home the bartender. What a pimp.
And yet another inscription in Latin reads, Atimetus possedi gravidam. This translates as, Imitus got me pregnant.
Go.
And lastly, but equally as funny, reads, Ego life mutus puellas hic. Translating as, I screwed a lot of girls here.
If you said so.
In the contemporary context, graffiti has many branches. The first I'll talk about is tagging, which originated in the 1960s in New York, when people used spray cans to tag on subway trains. We found that tagging, probably the most basic type of street art, is where it all begins for many street artists. It starts out with a thick marker and writing out your name in a visible place. If that is gratifying, a sort of calligraphy is developed, writing your name, or in some cases pseudonym, in increasingly stylistic ways. From there, the pathways are countless. Everyone has at some point believed that they are an artist, and at some point or another, you will have left your name or witty comment in a bathroom, stall, school desk, or if you're the romantic type, a tree. It is something of an existential affirmation. In the 1970s, a style war began between graffiti artists trying to become bigger and more famous, creating bigger and better pieces, and it all concluded in the rise of an entire subculture surrounding graffiti. In the 1980s, however, due to the heightened security, subway graffiti slowly died out. The last train with significant amounts of graffiti on it was taken off the lines in 1989, ending an era, but graffiti lives on the walls of buildings and other unlikely places that can be spotted by anyone that would care to look. Now let's talk about street art. How can one define street art? Well, there are many words for it. Tagging, graffiti, mural, public installation, logos, stickers, paste-ups, and the list just goes on. Call it what you will, but sooner or later you will have to recognize that the term street art is temporary. All art forms evolve, and their definitions are always contested. By trying to define it, you can quickly get wrapped up in the theory of art, which can lead to missights. A strict definition of what art is can in fact hinder it. Art that belongs on the streets, a sort of contextual art, incorporating mainly the techniques of painting, but also of sculpture and collage. Throughout this presentation, try to remember that it is a flexible art form that is constantly changing. Now we are going to talk about the history of graffiti in Italy. Though this art form is new to most countries, Europe has a long tradition and is believed to have originated in Italy during the 16th century. Italian Madonnari were vagabond artists. People tossed coins onto their Madonna drawings because they wanted to pay homage.
They traveled to paint religious pictures directly on the ground in public squares. They used chalk, brick, charcoal, and colored stones as their medium. Street painters in Italy are called Marinari, after their practice of reproducing images of the Madonna Saint Mary. It can be tied to Italy's long tradition of religious art. For centuries, this practice continued, until World War II, when hardships made it more difficult. Nonetheless, this art form had its revival due to the International Street Painting Festival in northern Italy. Still, the tradition morphs.
We are going to focus on one particular street artist named Blue from Bologna who has been active since 1999. Blue is actually a pseudonym because he chooses to remain anonymous. Blue came into the world of street art in 1999 with a series of illicit graffiti in the historical center of Bologna, located in the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy. He started with spray paint, but in 2001, Blue shifted into using rollers mounted on telescopic sticks with house paint. This switch in technique opened up new stylistic possibilities, allowing him to expand his visual vocabulary. Blue has also worked in countless other countries. Our thesis is as follows. Blue's artwork pushes a shift towards an open source philosophy in the art world, where anyone can have access to his message for free. He transforms public spaces and breathes new life into them without losing sight of context. His work is not about limitation, convention, or permanence, but rather acts as unique social commentary. We will support this by talking about two of his related pieces. The first piece I'm going to talk about is called The Evolution of Man. Its provenance is Prato, Tuscany. It can be found once you come out of the train station. It is located under a flyover, also called an overpass. His painting works with the existing architectural space. He is clearly conscious of the space. The natural activity of driving or walking along this wall located under the overpass adds to his painting. The movement associated with the place accentuates the idea of evolution, which is inherently about change, whether that means moving forward or going backwards.
Regarding his technique, Blue says, quote, I basically use just black and white water-based paint, a roller, and some brushes. I draw using a long pole with a brush on the top. If the wall is really big, I use a scaffold, or maybe a mechanical platform, end quote. He does not bog down his work with complicated techniques. He adjusts his technique depending on the nature of the space he is working in. His simple technique reflects the focus in his work. Every line and curve is intentional. Nothing is in excess. The iconography depicts the stages in which man evolved. Blue puts a spin on the traditional theory of evolution. He starts with single-celled organisms, then moves on to the different types of dinosaurs, mammoths, fantastical creatures of his imagination, apes, the first men who have developed tools, hunter and gatherers, and men with bow and arrow. This is followed by men with machine weaponry. The next figure is that of a fallen man and a skeleton. Then comes the turning point. The skeleton is succeeded by creatures you find at the beginning of the sequence, such as dinosaurs, jellyfish, and very single-celled organisms. His purpose is not to be scientifically accurate, but rather depict the world according to him. He is making a statement about how humankind is actually devolving. So the question is, why? In an interview with Iranian Daily News, the interviewer poses a question to Blue. How do you see the world today? Any personal viewpoints or thoughts you have? Blue responds, You're right, my paintings are reflecting more than what I could say with words. Personally, I try to live without making violence on anyone. I see two really dangerous things in the world, fear and rage. Everyone can be easily controlled through these emotions, especially in this historical moment. He turns us on to the excessiveness of violence that people and countries employ, and the unnecessary carnage of it all. The next piece we're going to talk about is called Big Bang, Big Boom. and it is a spectacular stop-motion graffiti animation depicting, quote, an unscientific point of view on the beginning and evolution of life, and how it could probably end, end quote. There's a lot here about our contemporary world and how plastics fit into it. The provenance of this piece is Uruguay, Argentina, so we can see that Blue is taking his ideas across the world, but because it is an animation, it is also part of the digital world. The technique of this piece is the same as the other one. Blue just uses black and white water-based paint, a roller, and some brushes. As with the other piece, he adjusts to the space and the world around him. So what is the purpose of this piece? Quote, evolution and its possible consequences, end quote. Blue dazzled with ambition of a project in which stop motion is used to bring animation through a form of graffiti and street chalk art and painting onto walls and silos and parking lots, moving out over a whole vast urban landscape. The invasion of animation drawing into real space is a terrific effect. Reptiles and prehistoric critters morph and move over walls. Plastic trash on the beach also comes to life and rolls up into a big ball. Human figures pop in and out, threatened by drawings. Art and life coexist in literal terms. Blue makes the world his canvas. Nothing parochial or inbred here.
Our thesis is as follows. Blue's artwork pushes a shift towards an open source philosophy in the art world, where anyone can have access to his message for free. He transforms public spaces and breathes new life into them without losing sight of context. His work is not about limitation, convention, or permanence, but rather acts as unique social commentary.
We would like to end with a piece of advice from Blue to future graffiti artists. Again, this is taken from the Iranian Daily News interview, and here's what he has to say. Quote, street art doesn't exist. There's just you and the outside world. Do what you like in the best way and think about what you are doing, end quote.